Hey, what's up, everybody? How's it going, VGM together?
Woohoo!
Hey,
Welcome, welcome. I'm Boz.
I'm Maeve.
I am OMG, it's Monica, and we're your charity crew to talk to you all about fundraising and
Yes.
using VGM to fundraise.
That's right. Very, very happy to be here. Thanks for having us, everybody.
Yeah,
Got it.
thank you.
Yeah, for sure. VGM Together, awesome event. And we have so much to tell you guys about using VGM to raise money for good causes, for charities. So let's get started. So step one, you want to you want to use VGM to raise money for charity. Where do you start? Well, the most important thing right at the beginning is picking a charity. That is probably the most fundamental thing to raising money for charity.
Indeed.
So, to go through that, you usually think, what charity do you want to fundraise for? What's a cause that speaks to you? Where do you start for that? So, ways you can do that are just if you don't already have a charity in mind, you can absolutely use Charity Navigator. That's a really good way. Or just through going on donation platforms themselves. Sometimes charities might reach out to you and say, hey, will you fundraise on our behalf if you're willing?
For sure, especially nowadays where we have like platforms such as Tiltify and things like that, it's a lot easier to find charities that are willing to work with gamers and gaming related organizations. That's something that really didn't exist. Like, I mean, 8, 10 years ago, that wasn't around. You kind of had to pick and choose charities. But now there's so many charities with gamer outreach programs like St. Jude doing Play Live, Director Leaf does fundraisers, things like that. And Charity Navigator is a great resource. It'll show you how transparent the charities are, how much of their fundraise money goes to supporting the causes that they're supporting, all sorts of things like that that are really useful for making sure you're picking a charity that is best suited to fundraise for what you want to.
For context as well, I used to work at a nonprofit, so I have a bit of a background in that. And then one of my biggest tips is research your charity that you're interested in fundraising for. Because I know, obviously, when Russia invaded Ukraine, a lot of people were like, whoa, what's going on? How can I help? Anytime there is a disaster, a lot of the time that happens. So, really look and research and see on the charity's website how they're using the money to help there. Photos are great. Anything like that is really great. Look and look through their messages and just always do your research.
For sure. I also just realized with you touching on you having done charity work in the past, do we want to talk about like our experiences a little bit with just like kind of where we're coming from with charity
Yeah.
work?
That's probably a good idea.
Yeah. Boz, you want to go ahead?
Yeah, sure. So I am the newest out of this group of beasts over here, but I perform with a VGM hip hop act called Geek Swag, and we've been fortunate enough to participate in a few charity events, and we've done a couple fundraisers on our Twitch channel as well. But I'm mostly providing a performer perspective. Don't know as much about the organizing side of things, but still happy to contribute what I do know here.
So I first got involved with charity organizations through Zeldathon, which both Monica and I work with, which is a fundraising gaming charity marathon that raises money for charity via playing Zelda games. I first found it in, I think, the end of 2013, and I watched it for a while before getting more involved around 2018. So I've helped with like, planning and prepping a lot of events and segments, and then along with that, some of Kinstone's other charity events, such as MomoCon and SideQuest, I've also been involved in.
Yeah, my background is I was a classical violinist, so I went to school for that and then was always really into video game music and just a huge nerd. And then I ended up finding out about Zeldathon through Radio Hyrule, shoutouts, and then I ran into a bunch of the attendees at Symphony of the Goddesses when it was in Toronto, and we vibed well. They eventually ended up inviting me to attend the event, and they had no idea that I was a violinist, so I just showed up with my violin in hand and like, all right, let's jam, let's go. And then since then, I just ended up getting more and more involved in the event, also attending MomoCon, representing them at St. Jude Play Live, and also now the sponsorship manager for Zeldathon as well. And yeah, then I also have a background because I worked in a nonprofit, so I know all about the admin side of nonprofits and kind of what goes on there. So I really apply those skills as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For sure. So then once you've picked a charity, you kind of know who you want to fundraise for. Well, then how do you actually fundraise? How do you get that money from the viewers who are donating to the charity? Well, you have to look into charity fundraising platforms.
Yeah, so there's a number of different ones you can use. There's Streamlabs has a free one through there. Recently, Twitch has one, but not if you're outside the US. So I, as a Canadian, can't
Mhm.
fundraise yet through anything on Twitch. The biggest one everyone knows is Tiltify. That's a really easy one. And then there's other ones too. There's Do Good Points is the one that I came across as well. And then if as well for those fundraising platforms, do your research there as well. I'm not gonna name particular ones, but I've heard some stories about certain ones that would sign streamers or charities into contracts, and then you find that you're trying to fundraise for another charity and you weren't able because there's some fine lines that you didn't read. But do your research, read everything.
Yes,
If
for
they're
sure.
making you sign some sort of a contract, that's kind of a little bit of a red flag. Look into that.
Yeah. A
Or
lot of the best streaming fundraising platforms are definitely ones that are easily accessible that you can get into with very few strings attached and get things going fast, honestly. It's definitely a lot more accessible to get into the charity fundraising world now. With Zeldathon, we had to have people code our own like back end and make our own
wow.
like fundraising platform, and now it's definitely way easier. So which is a very good thing. It means more money for charity, more people able to get into this.
Hmm.
Yeah, for sure. And then there's always really great steps for setting up those fundraising platforms too, if you're kind of not knowing how to do it. St. Jude Play Live, they have an excellent Discord with a very good step by step on how to set up a Tiltify and then add things into your Tiltify as well.
St.
Yeah,
Jude
let's
Play
go.
Live right here.
Ooh, let's go.
I have so many of those hoodies now that I had to give one to my mom, and I'm just giving them away now.
Oh
Anyone wants a
man.
purple hoodie, hit me up.
I remember one time someone asked me, he's like, "Oh, so you work for Twitch?" And I was like, "No." uh, so then all of us have some slightly different experiences with fundraising. So Boz, I know you have some more experience with individual streams as opposed to events that me and Monica have been part of. So do you want to talk a little bit about how you kind of put on these like individual streams and do stuff like that?
Yeah, so one example that comes to mind is on the Twitch channel that I'm a part of, swag_fam. We run a yearly event where we typically donate the everything from merch donations, bits to a charity or another organization, depending on what we want to contribute to that year. And we just try to keep it fun and keep it relevant to our audience. Like I'll probably talk about that a little bit more later when we get to incentives, but I think an important thing, especially on the individual stream level, is you are able to tailor your content to your audience very easily because hey, it's not like too many people outside of this community are even going to hear about this. If those people show up, that's awesome, but we're mostly catering to a specific crowd. So I think in those instances, it's really easy to just know your community and try to appeal to what they're interested in, both in terms of like you mentioned, picking a charity that resonates with the people who will be attending the event, and then also the types of activities, the incentives and rewards for contributing to the charity. And for the event that we do every year, we call it Swag Fest. We try to coordinate a lot of events that strike on, some that are more passive, some that are more involved, some that, are easier to get into, some that are more musically inclined. And, whatever it is, just trying to keep giving people reasons to come through, and then small or large ways that they can contribute to the cause. I think goes a long way. And then also, you know, when you're part of a smaller thing and you're not a bigger name or anything, getting the word out to your community, I think is really important. There won't be as much like, you know, people retweeting or posting like, hey, I'm performing at this thing. So you want to make sure that you continually engage your community to remind them, hey, this event's coming up. This cause is really important. We hope to see you there. Here's a list of things that we're going to be doing, stuff like that, putting together a schedule, giving people as much information up front as possible. I think goes a long way towards being able to raise money for those causes and stuff for individual streams.
For sure, and it really circles back to because I saw Eric saying, I'm considering starting a fundraiser next month. And then exactly what you said, Boz, just picking a charity that resonates with you, because
Mm,
that way it'll be such more of a natural flow in your stream. If you're already excited about the charity and you want to spread the word for them,
right.
that's like one of the biggest things because so many charities and nonprofits don't have money to put into advertising. So
Mhm.
it's huge for them whenever anyone decides to do a fundraising stream. Like that just gets the word out already. And
Right.
that's already a huge help. Even if you end up raising anything or not, you're helping share their mission.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Exactly.
And especially getting the word out early is definitely important. You know, give people lots of time to know when stuff is going to happen. You know, keep on spreading it. And I think one of the things that I've loved the most about the charity streaming kind of community online is how supportive they are of everybody. You know, bigger events are always like boosting smaller events and, you know, getting the word out. Everyone's so excited because, you know, no matter if you raise $100 or $100,000, you are still raising money for charity, and that's an amazing thing. So definitely I would encourage people to not be afraid to, you know, plan these events, put something together, and just really hype yourself up because you're
Yeah.
doing something amazing, honestly.
Right.
And you already have an amazing community of supportive people around you because the VGM community and the charity communities are the two that brought me to Twitch and the two that kept me on Twitch. And those are people I interact with. So, yeah, you already have a nice little network of people who'd probably be stoked if you're doing a fundraiser.
Yeah, for sure.
100%.
Yeah, and then on the flip side, you know, Monica and I have been involved with more events that have been more produced and have been more like there's VGM elements inside of a larger event. So, you know, with Zeldathon, for example, we're mostly playing video games, but then we are trying to also incorporate music into that. I mean, I think as far back as I can remember, the first time I think I saw any like VGM performed on a charity stream was in Games Done Quick in around like 2014. I remember seeing Jackson Prody, at the time referred to as Accordion Man.
Shout out Jackson, we love you.
For sure, for sure. Jackson's great, and he's definitely been like a staple of this community for such a long time. I wanted to play a clip from AGDQ, but I forgot that Trihex really likes to remove his shirt back then on streams, and I was like, I don't know if that's like safe for Twitch anymore, so I'm not gonna play it. But you know, being able to bring in music is such a good way of hyping people up. You know, you don't even necessarily need to have incentives for some of these VGM elements just because like hyping people up and bringing in the viewers is doing so much already. So, you know, even if you don't exactly know how to incorporate incentives into a music piece in an event, I would definitely encourage people to bring in video game music because it just, you know, it really brings people together to be able to listen to awesome video game music.
Agreed. Yeah.
For sure. And then that kind of puts us onto our next side because the Zeldathon is a big team event, but then all of us are able to offer different incentive ideas, which kind of moves us on to the next thing that we wanted to talk about, which is incentives. But yeah. Oh, I guess no, sorry, I'm looking at our notes before we get there. We're wanting to chat about improv versus rehearsed elements of performance. So that kind of will eventually lead into incentives. But yeah, you can sit down and focus on your stream or what you're doing. Are you going to have a set of music or are you going to be taking requests from the audience? There's different advantages to both.
Yeah. Audience request definitely brings in an advantage in that it is definitely a big incentive to donate if people can donate and submit those requests. And then it also has a lot more viewer engagement because you are more directly engaging with your audience, you know, pretty much asking them to participate in the stream. And you might not play every request, but just the idea of they're taking those requests really brings up those really brings up that engagement and gets people more interested in what you're doing.
Yeah, I agree completely. Like in our experience with performing at charity events, that tends to be something that people really enjoy. And like, improv versus rehearsed, right? We'll come through to an event with a planned set list in mind, knowing that it will get interrupted by people who pick things that they want to hear. And I think that can go a long way too, because you can even stretch out how much music you have to perform. Like
For sure.
for us, like we have a bunch of songs now, but even when we only had a few, it was nice to know, like, okay, we will probably end up playing all of our music, but the audience doesn't necessarily know that. So
Mhm.
they can be like, oh no, I want to make sure I catch the song from XYZ game. Let me, contribute and request that. And yeah, that can be nice, a little more free form.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's definitely an element of like what the viewers know versus like what you guys know you're gonna play. So you can like have a few songs like pick and chosen that you're gonna spread out and know, okay, we're gonna play this at some point. But being able to also incorporate those requests definitely, I mean, it gives, like you said, it gives a lot of flexibility with the time element as well,
Yeah.
which tends to be an issue, I think, in a lot of like sets and planning events like this. So like I remember at the last Zeldathon at one point we were having a tech issue and we were taking longer to set up for the next segment than we thought we were going to. And so we were already set up to do music. So we were just like, all right, start donating and request things. And it definitely, it definitely takes a lot more effort on the part of the musicians to like, improvise and be able to kind of bounce off each other. But it can definitely be really worth it for engaging with your audience.
Absolutely. And
For
then
sure.
you have to consider just the flexibility of what you're able to do too. For instance, at Zeldathon, we do both rehearsed segments and we also have our biggest improv, which is the jam train. But our rehearsed segments, we are able to kind of goof and then pre-plan a little bit more, whereas jam train kind of just happens and it just goes. As soon as you start, the train goes and the train stops for no one and it's just off. And then for the behind the scenes context, there's so many different people putting so much into that as well that you don't see. Like you only see the musicians on camera a lot of the time, but there's a small army of people that go into making Jam
Oh, for
Train
sure.
happen.
You have like a couple people on the audio mixers, you've got a couple people on cameras, one person doing the video switcher, someone set up lights. So it's definitely like a big production, which makes
Yeah.
stuff, really fun. But even if you don't have that level of production, you can still make it work. There's a lot of, software like OBS makes it very easy to do a lot of these like switching around, being able to mix on the fly, stuff like that.
Catch the next panel because Man is talking all about that.
Oh, really? Nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
Let's go.
But then I noticed in terms of it's funny and ironic because when we're doing an improv session at Zeldathon, we don't deviate from that as much. Whereas when we're doing a prepared one, we kind of get a little more goofy and like kind of do a little different things. Like as well, I think if you're doing a prepared stream and you know the music you're already playing, then you can pre-plan your incentives you're going to offer a little bit more and tailor them to that as well, where it's a little bit more difficult when you're improving.
Yeah, and you can definitely like deviate into some pretty goofy stuff. Like I remember we had one at a Zeldathon where we were doing a Breath of the Wild medley. They were like, well, what if we made this into like a dating sim where like the chat gets to pick which of the Breath of the Wild like characters they're gonna run off with and have this like whole storyline. And it got very strange, but like, you can do so much with a little bit of planning. It doesn't even have to be a lot of planning. There's so many possibilities. Let your creativity run wild because you don't just have to play music. You can just you can go wherever you want, really.
And in terms of, I saw Iraq mention it before, they were concerned about not getting to all the requests. Honestly, don't worry about it. Just as long as you're thanking your audience and you're letting them know how they're supporting the charity, a lot of the time that's a really important thing. I think realistically, audience knows that you're not able to get to everything. I mean, Gym Train is a big one and like a big example for that, but there are so many pieces that we don't get to in Jam Train, but people do still enjoy it. And that's the thing. Like, you might not hear your piece, but you still get to hear another piece that you're excited about.
Yeah, you might have the odd viewer complaining about their request not getting heard, but that's just kind of streaming, honestly. You're going to have a couple people who are just going to be nitpicking at you, and you kind of have to just not worry too much about that and pay attention to the people who are really enjoying you and having a fun time, you know?
Hey, and then if you don't get to it, you have the start of a set list for your next stream anyways, and just let them know that they'll hear it then.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
true that.
So speaking of all of this, talking about improv and rehearse, we've been talking about incentives a lot, because incentives really are kind of the core of VGM for
stream.
charity. And and I mean charity streaming in general, you know. Definitely people will donate on their own because they like charity and they like hearing their message read, but being able to incentivize the donations will really take you a long way. So how do you really get started with that?
Yeah. I can break down my process, or the process that we used for Geek Swag. I was, in prepping for this, I was thinking that's probably the most valuable thing that, we could contribute, is kind of how we came up with our set of donation incentives, because we've had, success with them to an extent, right?
Yeah,
so,
pull up your slides.
if you don't mind, thank you so much. All right. So, so these are kind of the main things that we thought about to arrive at our list of donation incentives, right? And it does vary a little bit from event to event as well. I think that's an important thing. But there's a few core things that you want to think about to get in the headspace for it, right? So one thing is obviously try to identify what some of your strengths are as as a performer or a group of performers, your act. Try to understand what some of your strengths are. And that kind of ties into the second one, which is, who is your audience and what do they enjoy about your performances? And this works for two reasons, because one, if your audience enjoys these things about your performance, it stands to reason other people might as well. And the other thing is, you want to be bringing your audience to the charity event as much as possible, because you obviously want to hype it up. You want to have some attendance there, some people engaging with your incentives and stuff. So trying to identify who is your audience and what do they like about your performances. And then, similar but also different is, you want to think about the specific event and who the audience is for that event, what that audience might enjoy. And this can come in a few forms, right? Like, if it's a VGM event, you can probably speculate that they like VGM. They probably like video games. If it's, something associated with Zeldathon, you might assume that they like Zelda games and Zelda music, stuff like that, right? And then when it comes to the incentives themselves, I think a couple of key things that we always try to include is providing a range of, really small ones, like monetarily, and also just in terms of how much time and involvement they take, all the way up to larger ones, right? Because not everyone has the means, but people want to engage. And I think that's important, right? It also, when you have a lot of, small things sprinkled in, it keeps the momentum going and keeps the energy up in terms of, like, donation culture or donation momentum. And then the other thing that we've had success with once we started doing it is establishing a few targets and like cumulative rewards for hitting those targets, right? We generally try to hit like our goal. We'll set a number of something we think we could reasonably reach. And then once we cumulatively have made that amount of money for the event, we will do something, usually involving new music or Gengar. And then we'll also sometimes hit like or we'll identify a stretch goal, which is usually higher than what we reasonably expect to achieve, but not way higher. But just having those kind of things to build to can be really nice, because then if you get super close, sometimes someone will be like, let's put them over the edge. Let's make this happen, right? And so, yeah, in thinking about those, let me break down how this framework applies to Geek Swag on the next slide. So for some of our strengths, I think we have a lot of songs, that in itself is useful, just to have a multitude. And the music and lyrics of the songs that we have in our song list span a bunch of different video games and genres. And that is something that I'll show you in a minute how it factors into our thing. And then Geek Swag, if you're not familiar with us, I'm one of the members. We also have another member. I rap primarily, and he's a singer. And he's really experienced, and he's really silly, and he's really good at coming up with, engaging melodies on the fly and stuff. And so we try to think of a way we could work that into our incentives as well. And then thinking about the audience, right? I'm pretty sure the incentives I pulled are similar to the ones that we put together for SideQuest. So, in thinking about that, hey, this audience and our audience likes video games. Audiences generally like to feel engaged as well. And when it comes to our specific audience, we know that they have specific songs that they like hearing performed live, like older ones that we maybe haven't performed in a while, or we do a thing on our channel where if you redeem points, you can request that we do a song from a specific game. So a lot of people have individual attachments to individual songs. Like Nudge has a few songs that we've made because of her point requests, and we know that she's always really happy to see those performed. So we try to leverage that into our incentives on the next slide. So what we came up with in this example incentives for a Geek Swag performance is for $5 or $1, $3, for some small, less than $5 amount, Zen will croon your username. He's our singer, right? And so that capitalizes on the strength of Zen's voice, and it gets the audience involved because it's like, hey, it's my username and I get to hear it. That's nice. That's fun for me. Similarly, for a little bit more, $10, we'll have Zen sing a message of your choice. And that's, hits on the same beats, Zen's voice, audience engagement. Actually, if we got time, can you play that second
I
clip
would
real
like
quick?
to play that clip because it made me laugh so much. I wasn't expecting it when
Let's
when
go.
you pulled it up. So let me pull that up in my it was the example of the sung donation. All right,
Thank you.
Yeah. Technical.
It's a fun clip.
It is a very good clip. All right.
This is from Eric.
Yep.
Awesome. Did you know that the critically acclaimed MMORPG Final Fantasy X1V has a free trial and includes the entirety of A Realm Reborn and the award-winning Heaven Sword expansion up to level 60 with no restrictions on playtime.
It's excellent because then you can donate and get people to read whatever you want, and people love that because then they'll do silly things like that.
Right, exactly. Oh man, that one's just like a huge meme, obviously, for everyone who plays that game. But then also like in Swag Fam, we have like a ton of people who do that. So Zen literally sings that like 3 or 4 times every time we do a charity stream. And it's just
Let's go.
It's too good. Would you mind pulling up my list of incentives again real quick? Thank you so much. Appreciate that. So the next one we have is you may have seen in that clip, we had a bunch of like GIFs of video game characters at the bottom. And so what we would do is for a smaller amount, 10, 15 or something, we would unlock one more. Like before the show, we'd set up a scene where there's like 15 of them, but they're all hidden except a couple. And then we're like, hey, if you donate and ask for this, we'll reveal another one. And then that's fun because you don't know which character you're going to get. And then it's also fun because it's kind of like a mini target of its own. Like, hey, if we do all 15 of these, the whole line will be complete and we'll get to see what all the games are. And that can be fun for people because it capitalizes on the audience's love for video games. And then we kind of get into some bigger ones. So we provide a song list of all of our music for people who wouldn't be familiar with it. And we also include in that what the what like the beat samples, or if it's over an OST, like what that OST is. We identify like, hey, what is the primary video game that this song is kind of about, right? And so then for a larger amount, sometimes we'll do 50. The audience will get to select what song we perform next. And it can be a repeat. If it's a song you already heard, you want to hear it again, we can do that. And so that hits a few different things. It's love of video games, like, oh, hey, I don't know this group, but I really love Donkey Kong Country. I would love to hear what this group does with the Donkey Kong Country thing and donate. So let's do that, right? It's the audience engagement, because it takes what could be like a straight A to B set list and varies it up a bunch with, you know, oh, hey, I missed it when you performed this song at the beginning of the set. Now they're performing it again. And then also for, you know, our fans who are familiar with us, like I mentioned before, if they have their favorites, they can summon those up onto the performance, which is really nice. And then for stretch targets, these are two that we set for side quest with different amounts, but we wrote a couple of Zelda themed songs for side quest. And for our first stretch goal, or for our first like target, we're saying, hey, if we hit this, we'll perform this new song. And then, hey, if we hit this way out there, we'll perform another. And yeah, that's kind of what we came up with for our incentives. It's worked really well for us. We yeah, that's kind of a breakdown of that.
I think it definitely, when creating incentives, it's very useful to create both those small ones that, like, if you donate $5, we'll do this, and then also having those cumulative targets, because that really allows you to split your incentives into these small things that you can do easily that, you know, are also still very fun and get people to donate, and then this big target that gets people to keep on donating because they want to see this big thing happen.
Right.
Yeah, the stretch goals are key. And then in terms of incentives, I think it's always really important to have them visible, so anyone new coming in knows what you're doing and what they can make you do.
If you guys saw on the clip that we showed, you could see in the top left corner it had the list of those incentives, so that it was very easy for anyone coming in to just see them right there.
A good charity stream. And then I saw questions about donation counter. And that kind of does play into incentives as well, because Tiltify has integrations that'll work with OBS and just pop right to that.
Yes.
I know Streamlabs has some too. It just comes down to what type of software you like to use, because different strokes for different folks. I mean, probably a lot of people use different audio software and stuff too. That's just what you like to use.
Yeah. And I think definitely when creating those stretch goals, I think, you know, there's a part that can be a little anxiety inducing, because you might be like, oh, well, what if I don't reach that goal? What if I don't get the donations? And that is definitely a real possibility and something you have to account for. And I think one of the most important things in raising money for charity is to not get discouraged by that, because that might happen. And then also, as you do more charity work, you'll get a little bit more familiar with the pace of donations and kind of get in the flow of things and figure out where things are at and be able to properly budget those incentives. But like, you know, like Baj showed, they had both like a smaller cumulative incentive and then a big one way up at the top. And that kind of allows you to have this tiered way of doing it, so that, you know, you might hit that mid one, but if you don't hit that big one, then, you know, it was the big one, so no big deal.
Exactly. And another nice thing about that too is, if you don't actually reach your bigger goal, but you're running out of time, you can always just give it out anyway, you know, which we've definitely done that before. And it always feels good, you know? So,
yeah,
for sure. I think one other thing that is really useful in terms of incentives is making something time-based, because, you know, obviously with cumulative donations, that's until the end of the stream. But if you put like a time limit on, hey, you have to reach this amount in the next hour or the next half an hour or before we finish a set even, that can really incentivize people to donate as well, because then, you know,
expiration date.
Exactly. There's a time limit on there. And so I do have an example of that from Zeldathon here. Let me pull this up.
Hi, everybody.
Hey.
We are the Zeldathon. What are we?
Ultra Super Deluxe, Underwire, Solid Gold,
Platinum emblazoned, sequined,
Ribbed,
bedazzled
Rest it with
band. Collective.
So, before we start playing for you all, we have a special little incentive for everyone. That's right. If we can raise $100 during the piece we're about to play for you, we will play an encore.
Always tip your musicians.
Yes, exactly. Yes. We've got a donation station keeping track for us, but that's only going to happen if you guys raise $100 while we're playing. Understand? Okay. Thank you.
I can't hear you, Jack. Thanks, Johnson.
No problem, Carlos.
Fairy tale.
So yeah, that was a good little example right there. That beginning of Tarrytown was at the end of the segment where, you know, they hit that incentive and started playing it. So
Nice.
putting on those those slight time restrictions are definitely a good way of and that allows you to keep playing more music. So that way, you know, you have the music you're already going to play. So even if they don't hit that incentive, they're probably still going to be happy with that.
You know,
also have the stretch goal.
I'll be real, even though I knew that wasn't happening right now, I felt the pressure. I was like, we got it. We got to hit 100.
We got to
hit it. Let's go. Where's the link?
Shout outs to Ben for that arrangement. Because, yeah, he had the Tarrytown arrangement prepped too, and we were practicing it. And we're like, oh, well, you know what? If we don't hit it, whatever, we have the Tarrytown in our back pocket for later too. And we could use that as like potentially another incentive during Zeldathon, be like, hey, do you want a music medley? Because I know during the last Zeldathon, we the musicians thought we would have more time to do one of our rehearsed ones, but because there had been a gap and we hadn't been together in person in a long time, there was already that like hunger and wanting to hear VGM. They're like, we want a music medley. So they announced it, and then like really soon after it was already hit, and we're like, oh, we thought we'd have like an hour and a half to like figure out our parts
20
and pull
minutes.
together. We're like, rush, let's go. Okay.
Yeah. But yeah, so there's definitely a lot of ways you can do incentives, and just I want to reiterate again, be creative. Like those dancing GIFs on the bottom screen, that's such a creative way of getting people to donate. You know, it doesn't all have to be related to what you're playing. You can do so much there.
Your incentives are like, it's so important to have incentives that are unique to you and like what makes sense for you too. Because Sab Irene, shout outs to my girl, she had an incredible stream for Direct Relief Sessions when that was taking place. She did one that was a whole live composition stream. So she just wrote a little piece, and then she had, if you donate $5, you can include this in the piece. If you donate $10, you can include this in the piece. And it was a really, really interesting one.
I remember at the last Pokeathon that happened, there was a, which is an event that my friend Abra runs, there was a Glitch X City thing. And what she was doing was you could donate and like choose different instruments to add into the composition as she was doing it, and it was so much fun because you could just donate and be like, I want a glockenspiel in there, I want an accordion, I want the harpsichord. And you know, you can do so much creative stuff that isn't even related to performing live music. I know I'm a person who doesn't do very well with solo performing, but then you know, you can do stuff with like music composition and like electronic music and DJ sets and all sorts. There's really like, use your strengths to your advantage is, I think, the big thing.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I think we have about 5 minutes left. So I think now's a good time to take some audience questions and, you know, and answer them, presumably.
Hopefully, right?
We'll take the questions. No,
you don't get answers. No answers unless
we'll give you a score based on how good your question is.
Surprise, we're fundraising for X charity and we need donations to actually answer your question.
Why are the three of you so awesome?
Thanks, everyone.
11 out of 10 questions. That coffee?
It's just the coffee.
It's the coffee. Yeah.
Shout outs to hot water.
Yeah.
It's done now.
Of course, Eric, please do. You can DM me. You can find me on the community Discord. You can also post your questions in the community general chat if you think of something later, and tag any of the three of us. We'll be
Yeah.
happy to respond. Yeah.
The panels chat in the Discord is also good.
Oh, right. That's the
Yeah.
one that I actually meant. Sorry.
Yeah. And if
That
you
one.
guys have any questions about the tech side of it as well, I do a lot of tech stuff for these streams. I'm actually like, right when I'm done with this panel, I'm going back to doing tech for VGM Together. So
If anyone has questions about charity aspect and research in that, I'm always happy to help. I'm OMG It's Monica everywhere. And then just specifically OMG It's Monica with a K.
Yes, that's right.
okay.
Sabo, hard to pick a single best one, but I'm a sucker for The World Ends With You. It's so good. It's so good. Music, everything. It's so good.
A question from around, in all seriousness. You discussed a lot of this resources already, but has anyone put together a Discord server for this type of thing? There's a really I want to direct you to Alyssa Sweetman on Twitter and everywhere. Alyssa used to work as the charity person after Scout moved on from Twitch. She is always putting together really great resources on her Twitter. And then also she moved on to Player 2, which is a marketing agency for influencers and influencer fundraising, but she pairs up brands that want to work with charities and charities that want to work with influencers. Yes, Alley Cat is. Thank you for posting that around. But she will let you know so many things. She's a phenomenal person, much more knowledgeable than myself about charities, and she will probably be happy to answer your question too. Or Romscud as well will probably answer your questions.
Yeah, I'm not sure if there are any general charity streaming Discord servers, but I know a lot of like individual organization servers have a lot of information, resources, and people who are more than happy to give you information. I know the Zeldathon Discord definitely talks about that stuff. I know Pokeathon has a thing called Trainers Unite, which is very much a like collective individual streamers fundraising for the same cause under the same umbrella, and they talk a lot about how to do that. Extra Life has one, says Sinister Sabo.
I know of a lot of charities that have their own individual one. I don't know of any that I don't know of any specific network that has one, but Alyssa did make a Twitter group for anyone who's interested in influencer fundraising. Just say influencer fundraising, just 'cause that's what you are doing when you just any streamers who want to fundraise.
Right.
She made a Twitter group that I joined for that, and I think I made the Zeldathon Twitter join in there as well.
Nice.
Yeah, that's the start of one, but that's a really good idea for a Discord just as a general network or just some sort of thing like that where you have an access to other people who will have the same questions as you.
And for real, like community is the biggest resource here. There are so many people who have so many different sets of skills and just can give you so many pointers on how to do all these things. You know, there's people who are more familiar with audio, there's people who are more familiar with the streaming tech side of things, people who have been making incentives for these things for like a decade at this point and can really help you out. So
yeah, never be shy to ask questions, because what I've seen and experienced within both the charity fundraising people and VGM people, everyone is really nice and always jumping up and happy and ready to help out someone else or answer questions. Like they're both two groups that just boost up others and want to see others succeed. So don't be shy to ask questions.
100%. Yeah. Looks like we got time for maybe one or two more questions.
Yeah. Are we allowed to also answer what our favorite soundtracks are, or is that just
you should, because I'm curious, right? I'll ask that question.
I'm big on Pokemon and Zelda, but I think Pokemon Black and White is probably my favorite. Like there's so much like jazz in there. There's so many like it's one of those games that came out like towards the end of its console's lifespan, so they just really knew how to do everything, and the music in Pokemon Black and White is absolutely fantastic. Like I'm not even super into jazz like generally, but it works so well.
Yeah, that soundtrack is incredible. I completely agree.
Yeah.
It's a predictable answer for me, but it's got to be Breath of the Wild, hands down. I was laughing when Showcase was happening, I was watching it. I'm like, man, I still to this day get so tilted whenever people are like, Breath of the Wild has no music. I'm like, shut your mouth.
It's
Shut
like,
your
you be
mouth.
quiet. Ambient music is a genre of music, and it is so good.
Oh my god,
Like,
there's so many.
exists.
Yeah, there's
and
so many
there's
gorgeous
more than
things.
just the ambient music. But I remember I was watching the panel earlier about Assassin's Creed music, and I was reminded very much of Breath of the Wild style, with a lot of the kind of just very subtle stuff that really adds to
Yeah.
the environment. So
Yeah,
And
that's
just how
right.
interactive it was.
yeah.
Like once you hop on the horse, you get the horse music at night. Oh, chef's kiss.
You can't beat it. Can't beat it.
Perfect.
All right. Well, yo, thank you all so much for being here and for
Yeah.
listening to us. Maeve, Monica, thank you for this as well.
Yes,
It's a
thank
ton of
you,
fun.
Boz, for sure.
Yeah.
You also
Yeah.
brought a lot of good information.
Thank you so much.
so-
And thank you for letting me hop on board to your panel. Because like I was thinking like, what could I ever have a panel about? And like I thought of it after the date, and then Nish told me, she's like, I know 2 people who already want to do that. I'm like, sweet.
Yes. Oh, it
Yep.
worked out so well.
All right, well, enjoy the rest of VGM together. It's the last day, but we still have so
Yeah.
much more to go. So
Yeah.
stay tuned, keep watching, and we'll
That's
see you guys
right.
around.
Thanks
Thanks
all.
so much.
Take it easy.
Bye.
Thanks, Doug and Nish, for arranging everything too.
Thank you.